Hi, everyone. So, this episode is going to be story time, where I read you an article from the New York Times that came out yesterday regarding autism. Just in case people don't have subscriptions to the New York Times, um, maybe you'll find this article somewhat helpful, or like at least it'll get you thinking about some stuff. It's not like life changing, but I don't really see articles about autism from the New York Times. So I read it and I have some mixed feelings about it. But I chose it because it dives into a topic that's been at the center of so much misunderstanding about autism, which is its causes and the increase in diagnoses. And for like many of us, stories like this can feel like a double-edged sword where like on the one hand, they debunk like harmful myths like that fucking vaccine autism link. Oh my god, will people stop with that? Just stop. You sound stupid. You sound stupid. Vaccines don't cause autism. Give me a fucking break, man. I'm so sick of hearing that shit. But anyways, the article debunks that myth, which is fucking stigmatized autism for years. And then on the other hand, I don't know, like articles like this tend to lack the affirming and nuanced perspective that we need, which is the voice from other autistic people or the voices. Am I talking? Um, this is probably a good thing that I'm reading instead of just talking randomly throughout this episode because I'm having a hard time connecting my brain to my mouth. Um, but anyways, this article discusses the complexity behind the rise in the autism diagnoses, and it explores both the genetic and environmental factors. Um, but maybe more importantly, it acknowledges that autism is not something new or unnatural. It's something that's been part of the human experience ever since they were people, probably. But anyways, I should just do the reading. Okay, so this is um I'm not gonna include the link, but I will, say who wrote it because like I don't know who out there has subscriptions to New York Times and who doesn't, so the link might be irrelevant. But just in case, um for new people who would like, I'm not advertising for them. They're not paying me. I'm just saying for new people, you could get a pretty good deal on the digital version because like that's like $20 a month. And I had been paying $20 a month for the New York Times for about a week, or no, not a week, a year. And I don't know, like I had gotten busy and I was like, I haven't had time to read a bunch of stuff from the New York Times lately. So I went to cancel my subscription. And you know how they try to get you to stay by offering you some deal, and the deals aren't always that good. Well, this deal was if you stay, you only have to pay $4 a month for the next year for this subscription. And I sat there and I read that a few times. I'm like, is this for real? Like, they're offering just from $20 a month to $4 a month for a year. So of course I took them up on that. I mean, hello, $4 a month? Fuck yeah. And this doesn't make sense. It has no relevancy to what I'm gonna read or whatever. Um, Apparently it wasn't that important because I forgot what it was. I'm just gonna start reading. Okay, so this is called Research Finds Vaccines Are Not Behind the Rise in Autism. So what is? There is no one factor that causes autism or explains its growing prevalence. Researchers are seeking explanations for the surge. Here are some possibilities. And this was written by Emily Baumgartner. Um, when President elect Donald J. Trump mused in a recent television interview about whether vaccines cause autism, a theory that's been discredited by dozens of scientific studies, autism researchers across the country collectively sighed in frustration. But during the interview on NBC's Meet the Press, Mr. Trump made one passing comment with which they could agree. I mean, something's going on, he said, referring to skyrocketing rates of autism. I think somebody has to find out. Fuck Trump. So what I said that, not her. So what is going on? Autism diagnoses are undeniably on the rise in the United States. About 1 in 36 children have one, according to data the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention collected from 11 states, compared with 1 in 150 children in 2000. And researchers have not yet arrived at a clear explanation. They attribute most of the surge to increased awareness of the disorder and changes in how it is classified by medical professionals. But scientists say there are other factors, genetic and environmental, that could be playing a role too. Autism spectrum disorder, as it is officially called, is inherently wide ranging, marked by a blend of social and communication issues, repetitive behaviors, and thinking patterns that vary in severity. A mildly autistic child could simply struggle with social cues, while a child with a severe case could be nonverbal. There is no blood test or brain scan to determine who has autism, just a clinician's observations. Hello, who has autism? Right, it's like, can we stop referring to it? This isn't her, this is me. If, hopefully you can tell. Um, Probably you can. It's not, nobody has autism. It's not a thing you have, it's a thing you are. I don't know, like I know that there's autistic people that have no problem saying I have autism, and I'm not here trying to shame you or like offend you or anything. Just for me, in my opinion, like I cringe every time I hear somebody say oh, I have autism, or if I read somebody say I have autism, or I know someone who has autism, that makes it sound like a fucking disease and it's not. It's just you're autistic or you're not. Like, I don't know how difficult that is. Anyways, okay, sorry, back to the article. I'll try to stick with it and keep my comments to myself, hopefully. Okay. Because there is no singular cause of autism, scientists say there is therefore no singular driver behind the rise in cases. But at the heart of the question is an important distinction. Are more people exhibiting the traits of autism, or are more people with such traits now being identified? It seems to be both, but researchers really aren't sure of the math. Here's what they know: an elusive cause. More than 100 genes have been associated with autism, but the disorder appears to result from a complex combination of genetic susceptibilities and environmental triggers. The CDC has a large scale study on the risk factors that can contribute to autism, and researchers have examined dozens of potential triggers, including pollution, exposure to toxic chemicals, and viral infections during pregnancy. Some research suggests that babies born to older parents, particularly to an older father, may be at increased risk of autism. Other studies hint that premature birth or low birth weight could be associated with autism, which is often linked to high oxidative stress. The idea that such factors could also be involved in the overall rise in autism is convincing to Jürgen Hahn, a professor at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, who studies the computational systems biology of autism, given that both the number of children surviving premature birth and the average age of new parents are rising. But testing a hypothetical driver of autism would mean controlling for the endless list of other influences on early development and following the child well into adulthood when some people now receive their diagnosis. These are very complicated studies to conduct, especially if you want statistical certainty, and there are no easy answers, Dr. Hahn said. Sometimes we just have to say we don't know, and that always gives people room for speculation. The misinformed theory that vaccines are behind the disorder is one such case of speculation. It gained traction when a British researcher named Andrew Wakefield published a study of 12 children in the late 1990s, purporting to reveal a link between the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and autism. Many larger studies have since discredited the hypothesis, including one that enrolled the entire Danish child population. Regardless of the types of vaccines, the ingredients, or the timing of the schedule, researchers have not been able to establish a link. Dr. Wakefield's article was retracted and he lost his medical license, but the seeds had been planted in social discourse. Diagnostic changes. One component in the boom of autism cases is far more certain: the broadening parameters of the spectrum. Autism first appeared in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders in 1980, in the guide's third edition, but its definition changed in 1987 when it came to include children who I'll just start that over. Autism first appeared in the DSM in 1980 in the guide's third edition, but its definition changed in 1987 when it came to include children whose symptoms appeared at older ages, after 30 months. The new edition also expanded the criteria for a diagnosis of autism to 16 from 6, and said children needed to exhibit only half of the 16 criteria listed rather than all 6 of the previous criteria. The fourth edition of the DSM, published in 1997, included Asperger syndrome, a social disorder that can be marked by a preoccupation with a single interest on the autism spectrum. That was a significant shift since it meant that all people, including those with average or even above average intellectual abilities, could receive the diagnosis. The fifth edition, released in 2013, allowed clinicians to give a combined diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It also folded autism, Asperger syndrome, and a condition called PDD-NOS, short for pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, under a single umbrella. What we call autism has itself changed to become a broader category, said Simon Baron Cohen, the director of the Autism Research Center at the University of Cambridge. And, he said, with the growth in private clinicians offering diagnosis, it's become an industry. Increased awareness. At, as those clinical processes were evolving, so was the social infrastructure. Until the 1980s, many people with autism were institutionalized, so parents were far less familiar with the hallmark of traits of the disorder and typically did not recognize them or seek a diagnosis when they occurred in their own child. Then, in 1991, children with an autism diagnosis began to qualify for special services in school, which gave parents an incentive to seek out and accept diagnoses. Around 2007, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommended that all children be screened for autism at 18 and 24 months, which experts believe led to a major uptick in detection. Several changes in population level trends add further evidence that awareness and inclusion could be behind the surge. Historically, boys have been diagnosed with autism. Stop it. At far higher rates than girls, who are thought to mask their autistic symptoms because of social norms. But in an era of greater acceptance for neurodiversity, the gender gap is narrowing. Hispanic, Black, and Asian children showed major increases in autism diagnoses compared with white children between 2011 and 2022, which could reflect improved access to diagnostic services. And perhaps most indicative, relative increases in autism diagnosis rates in the last decade were greatest not among children, but among adults ages 26 to 34, many of whom were seeking their own diagnosis for the first time. Researchers also point to the influence of social media as one of the biggest unrecognized factors driving the explosion of autism diagnoses, Dr. Baron Cohen said. Um, Platforms like Reddit, he said, became a space where people might wonder if they or their child were autistic, could communicate with each other, and feel a new sense of belonging and identity, he said. Still, for Catherine Lord, a psychologist at the University of California, Los Angeles, who has developed diagnostic tools and longitudinal studies for autism, the math just isn't working. Some of it's clearly from greater awareness and broader inclusion, she said. But even if those are the biggest factors driving the surge, and even if biological and environmental factors are contributing as well, it seems a little far fetched to think that all of these add up to the increase, she said. She is confident, though, from copious data in both the United States and abroad, that heightened autism prevalence does not correspond to childhood immunizations. Whatever it is, she added, it's not vaccines. Hopefully, I didn't make too many mistakes and stumble across my words when I read that. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think it's like good. It's a decent article, in my opinion, that, kind of showcases some of the difficulties our community has been having um with this stuff. But I don't know. I think that we also need to center the conversation on like autistic lives, not just data or diagnoses. And I feel like the article scratches the surface but misses an opportunity to frame the rise in diagnoses as like a positive shift, something that reflects like greater awareness or acceptance, maybe a move toward embracing neurodiversity. I think this mystery around autism isn't something that needs solving. It's a call to listen to autistic voices and build a world that respects and includes us. So, I mean, there was interesting information in the article, but I still would rather read shit about like I would rather have read an article by an autistic person. No offense to this lady. I mean, maybe she is autistic and she just didn't say it, but like um I don't know if I'm like explaining this correctly, but I just sometimes the stats, the numbers, reading it from like somebody who's not even autistic, I don't know. I feel like I would I don't know if this is rude, but like I prefer to read stuff by other autistic people, especially about this shit, and I haven't found any um or any that like come to the top of my mind or whatever, or the front of my mind. But I want to read stuff like this from other autistic people, and I would like, because I would like to see affirming language too, inclusive language, like, autistic people, autistic. I would like to see more information on autistic adults because, yeah, I mean, kids were mentioned in this article because, she was talking about vaccines, but there wasn't tons of stuff about adults other than they're getting diagnosed as adults. I don't know. I just feel like it kind of lacked a little bit. I mean, this is the New York Times. Like they write pretty decent things. They do their research or whatever, but I do not like articles like this where there's shit like if you have autism or if you're diagnosed with autism. I don't like that. It just bothers me. I prefer being diagnosed as autistic because that we're autistic people. We don't have some condition. It's just who we are. So, I don't know how helpful this was, but I don't know. I thought I would read it and you can decide for yourself if you feel like you want to do that. Or maybe there's anybody out there that is thinking about becoming a researcher who is autistic and would like to do autistic research. Can we get more of those people, please? I know they're there. I know we have some, but I would like them to comprise the majority of people who report on autism. It should be autistic people reporting on autism. That's it. Maybe that's rude. I'm sorry if it is. That's just how I feel. So, once again, this was the New York Times. The article is research finds vaccines are not behind the rise in autism, so what is? And it's written by Emily Baumgaertner. Um, so that's all I got for today. Thanks for listening. Bye.